Should I use this and Billy Blue? Okay. All right. Welcome all to our 24th Annual Art Extravaganza and Guest Artist Talk. This is our second year here at the winery, and thank you. We want to thank our host, Jameson Ranch Vineyards. Let me start off by saying I am Mark Joseph. I'm the president of the Arts Foundation, and I am very grateful and glad that all of you are here despite the weather. The last thing before I introduce our speaker is to remind you all, after this, come downstairs to the first floor, second floor. We'll have a reception. Like I said, the winery is hosting, so they've already given you your ticket for a splash of wine. There'll be some hors d'oeuvres. And we will encourage you to buy art, get on our silent auction items, help us raise money so that we can give back to the community. We were able to give out almost $3,000 this year, and if we can raise that or more, we'll give out more. So we appreciate your support. Lastly, I now want to introduce our guest speaker, Lynn Bogert Dykstra. Native from Calistoga, has been the last 30 years in Washington, D.C. As she likes to say, when she was 7, she got her first box camera, or Brownie camera, and the rest is history. So, because I've been talking long enough that you're probably tired of hearing me, I'm just going to say welcome to Lynn, and she will take it from here. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much for coming out on this rainy day. I mean, wow. Oh my gosh. I just looked out the window and I think I see sun way over in Marin County. So don't all just jump out and go over there right now. I want to thank Mark and the board of directors for asking me to do this talk this year. I've spent 30 years in Washington, D.C., and it's been quite an adventure. The other thing I want to do is thank Jameson Ranch Vineyards for their wonderful venue that they provided to us. This is the second year, and I want you all to go out onto the veranda when you can, and go downstairs for the reception on the first floor, but the veranda has heat, so it's very, very comfortable, very, very nice. Once upon a time, I was 7 years old, and I bought my first camera in the Calistoga Diamond Dollar Store on Main Street. And the rest is history, as Mark said. It even came with a free roll of film. I photographed my dogs, my cats, my peacocks, anything on my ranch that moved, my family. It allowed me to record a moment and have it forever. And that was very, very cool for me. Flash forward many years, and I still was an avid photographer, interested in photography. And I took classes, I built a dark room. I hired real photographers to create slideshows and programs for the work I was doing in my non-photography career. I've got one of those is here today, Brian Bates, who has been active with me for years and years. We lost track while I was in Washington, and now we've reconnected. So he's helped me a lot in putting this show together, and I thank him very much. He's here with his wife, Nikki. The time in 1984 was the turning point when I made a decision, quite dramatically, to become a professional photographer. And long story short, the bottom line is I opened a business and did not own a professional camera. I teamed up with a photographer named Dave Bush in San Francisco, who I had met at the Democratic National Convention, where I was working under other job, not photography job. And in September of '84, I opened Focused Images. And I was doing the marketing for Dave, and I was also borrowing his cameras and taking a few photographs with permission, of course, of his borrowing of his cameras. The first big event I booked 2 months after opening my business was the Super Bowl of 1985, where we covered the NFL commissioners' events with 5,000 of his closest friends. I said, whoa, this is pretty cool. I could do this. A few years later, 1986, I moved to Washington, D.C. There's a long story there, but it was 30 years ago exactly to this week. So I find it really amazing that I'm bringing this story back. Exactly 30 years, I'm bringing it home to Napa Valley. I've had opportunities, I've had experiences, I've had challenges that amaze me every single day that I think about them. So what I'm sharing today is minuscule. I mean, I've clicked this camera a million times, literally a million times. What I'm showing you today is minuscule in terms of the number of photos, but they're favorites of mine, and I've chosen them for who and what they represent in history. I don't have any state secrets to share, but I do have some fun tidbits to share, even stories I'll tell on myself. Regardless of the elected official I photograph, or anyone for that matter, I always see them and talk to them as human beings first. Regardless of their political leanings, they are just as vulnerable, just as curious, just as human as you and I. They hold temporary positions of great responsibility and power. Some hold it better than others. When their terms are up, they become private citizens again without the power and the trappings, and guess what? They are still human beings. When the camera is around my neck, the politics of one person or the other do not enter into my camera lens. What comes out of my camera comes from my heart through my eyes. I look for the positive connections people bring to each other, and how these images can best benefit my clients, their guests, and through the web, now the world. I capture successes, I capture connection. I'm trusted by my clients year after year, so there must be something that brings them back. I like to believe it's the integrity of my photography. I will never, ever send out a photo that is unflattering or negative of anyone I have ever photographed, regardless of position, regardless of who it is. I made that promise 30 years ago, and I'm proud to say I've kept it every single click. So with that, let's get on with the show. One little caveat, please view these images. Now, I see things that you may not see, but I'm kind of sort of a little tiny bit of a perfectionist. And so look at these images for the content of their message, not from the technical quality of the way they come up on the screen. Some of them are scanned from copies, some of them are more recent digital ones, some of them are from negatives, so it's kind of a technical mishmash. But we made it work, and I'm pretty happy that you'll love the stories. So lights, cameras, 30 years of political action. It's cherry blossom time in San Francisco, in Washington, D.C. Probably is here too, but it's cherry blossom time. I just got back from Washington and the cherry blossoms were blooming just beautifully. This shot was not taken last week. It was an earlier photo I've taken, but I love it because that is not artificial light coming through the monument, the memorial. That is the sunrise. And it's absolutely a beautiful time to be down there and to take a look at that. This particular image, Mark talked about a little bit with Eugene Debs. Rosa Parks is the mother of the civil rights movement, and this is in Statuary Hall in Washington, D.C. Eugene Debs, the sculptor, spoke to us about this 2 years ago. If you go to Washington and you tour the Capitol, please stop in this beautiful room. There are 100 statues representing 50 states, prominent representatives of each state, and then there are statues commissioned by Congress. The Rosa Parks statue was one of those. Oh my gosh, what have we got coming in this summer? I just can show you what we used to have. So access to the floor is where it all happens. The delegates do their thing. They stand a lot, they shout, they caucus, they wave flags, and most importantly, they vote for the party's nominee for President of the United States. It's a wild time on the floor. Upon the final votes, the nominee gives a victory speech and the general election campaign is launched. The image on the right shows, see if I can get my little, no, yeah. Right here, this is Bill Clinton giving his acceptance speech at the convention. Almost 1,000, I say several hundred members, but almost 1,000 members of every single agricultural group in the country you can think of go to this Great America Farm Breakfast at the Republican conventions. It's the big ticket item for the farm communities. We've got everyone from wheat farmers to potato growers to the National Turkey Federation. Here you see the hearty first course, yogurt and a baked apple. Where's the ham? Where's the eggs? Where's the pancakes? I hope this is just the first course. The presidential debates have kind of been hijacked by the networks this primary season. The official debates are sponsored by the Commission on Presidential Debates and are held in October before the election. This year is the first time networks have really taken over the primaries. And we've had some free-for-alls, as we know. Being the official photographer for these fall debates, it gave me exclusive access. No other photographer was in the room to the candidates during their rehearsal times, where they checked sound, they checked lighting, they made major decisions like, which tie do you think I should wear that will look best on TV? The answer? The one he's wearing now. That was it. Here's another little tidbit. George Bush, 6'2". Michael Dukakis, somewhere between 5'6" and 5'8". The Dukakis team wanted their candidate to have visual equality, to get him to appear taller. What do? Give him a soapbox? Well, if you look closely, there's a built-up mound. Let's see if I can get my clicker working again. Anyway, on the picture on the right, there's a little built-up mound under the carpet. That is how they made him appear taller. And it was pretty clever, actually. Not as tall, just a few inches taller, to give what they call, or what I call, visual equality. Have you ever seen such a jolly get-along political group of individuals who are running for president? We don't see that now. If we could do this now, what these three did then, with this kind of humor during the debate, we'd be headed in the right direction. Mr. Clinton went on to be president, Mr. Bush returned to being a private citizen, and Mr. Perot went back to Texas to take care of all of his holdings. If only we could have that kind of camaraderie again. Wow. So the transition is coming upon us. On January 20th, 2017, Mr. Obama and Mr. Biden will ride to the Capitol for the very last time in the same car. And the new president will be sworn in. And after the ceremony, they'll be escorted down the east steps of the Capitol and whisked into a waiting helicopter. The pilot circles the Capitol and the White House one last time and whisks them off to Andrews Air Force Base. Mr. Former President will board a plane and be flown to his hometown, I presume Chicago this time. He'll ride in the same plane he's ridden in all these years, with one exception. It is not called Air Force One. Only when a sitting president is aboard is the signal Air Force One used. Now, I'm not sure what they're going to do with Mr. Biden because, I mean, he lives in Delaware. That's an hour train ride up the road. Maybe they just deliver him to Union Station. I don't know. When the new president gets out of the luncheon that's being held in the Capitol and embarks into the car and goes down Pennsylvania Avenue, everybody is there waving and trying to get a glimpse of the president. And people in the buildings along Pennsylvania Avenue are actually hanging out, well, they're not hanging out the windows, but they're pressing up the windows so far that sometimes the floors creak because so many people are on that side of the room. I have no idea how they think they can get a glimpse, but they sure try. So this is the president's car amongst all of the Secret Service cars, amongst all of the trucks with all the press in them. Somewhere in there is the President of the United States, brand new, having on his way to the White House for the first time. Or is he? I'm inside, I'm covering an inaugural party. Well, look who shows up. The President and Michelle Obama. How'd they get over there? A first kiss for the First Lady? Look, Michelle! Look, there we are. These two had a whole career ahead of them when President and Mrs. Obama came into power. They're lookalikes. And here they are. They arrived for their home for 4 years, and in this case, 8 years. This particular image of the president was taken 6 months into his presidency. You can see how young he looks compared to how he looks now. It's an absolutely tough job for anybody.
Was that the previous picture of the president?
No,
That was just
that was a lookalike.
Okay, lookalike.
That's a lookalike, yes. But it sure fooled a lot of people in that party. It sure did. And I posed them. I posed them at the window, looking down at their entourage coming in. So I thought it was kind of fun. So I've photographed a lot of events that involve a president, both in the White House and outside the White House. And I've chosen just a few here because I want these to show how they've made a profound difference in the lives of many. One of them was the inauguration and the dedication of the Children's Inn at National Institute of Health in 1990 with President Bush. This created an opportunity for families to have a safe home and a free place to live while their children are going through intensive research and intensive care and treatments at NIH. It provides tremendously supportive environment for families, and it served over 12,000 families to date, and in many states, from many states and from many, many countries. It really tends to the child's heart, the child's soul, and the child's spirit while they're going through this crazy, wild stuff to try and save their lives. So, this is the Rose Garden in the White House. This is a photo op. The flags come out, the banners, the placards on the podium. It's a bill signing. It's a national event. It's the signing of the new minimum wage. All the whips, bells, and whistles come out so the press can get this. And then I'm there too, but I'm not press. They even brought in families, kids, all the visuals. I included this issue because, again, it's in the forefront of current news. And right now the states are are taking up this issue, not the federal government. The current Congress has chosen not to move forward with it at this time. So, unlike the minimum wage event, this too was held in the Rose Garden. It's not so much a photo op with all the flash and the flags and such, and it's not a bill signing, but it was an announcement to bring digital opportunity to the from digital divide to digital opportunity, those who don't have access. And this was 1999, and right, whoops, getting ahead of myself here. Up here, behind the president, stands Steve Case, the founder of AOL. How many of you use AOL? Yay! Well, he's the one that set it up for you. There are some White House events that stand out over others for me. This particular one I have a soft spot in my heart for. The Elizabeth Dole Foundation, Caring for Military Families. It was founded by her when she discovered how many family members were not getting the support they needed to take care of the wounded husbands and wives, the sons and daughters that came home from our recent wars. This recent event in the White House is a tribute to those, again, who work together, whether you're a Democrat or a Republican. You do it for the common good of many. Here you have the First Lady Michelle Obama, a fierce advocate of military families. Rosalind Carter, the former First Lady, whose monumental work in mental health has supported military families for decades. Dr. Jill Biden, our second First Lady, and the first Vice President's wife to hold an active PhD in education. And Elizabeth Dole, who has dedicated her career to public service as Secretary of Transportation, of Labor, American Red Cross President, and don't forget, the first woman to run for the President of the United States in 1999, and U.S. Senator. She continues her dedication with this foundation that was formed 2 or 3 years ago. She and her husband, Bob Dole, who's now 92 years old and still goes to the office every day, are the top tier leaders in Washington when it comes to assisting military families. I've had the honor to photograph their events and be friends with them for, well, since 1987. So I have a very special place in my heart for them. Oh, yes, these are not cardboard cutouts. This is the President of the United States and Mrs. Bush with constituents who are in a presidential receiving line. But I'm having a real problem with this. The first shot is great. Okay, the president comes in and he greets people. Hi, how are you? You know, shaking the hands. How are you? He moves them over into place. Every time he does, his tie moves a little bit more to the right, just a little bit. Now, I'm kind of a little teeny tiny bit of a perfectionist, but I also don't want my pictures going out where my President of the United States, regardless of who he is and regardless of the politics of it, has a crooked tie. I mean, that's not acceptable to me. And it gets worse. It just gets worse. And I'm like, I gotta do something about this. I have no idea what I'm gonna do. I've got Secret Service on both sides of me. We've got people coming in every 8 seconds. There's 150 people to photograph, 150 groups. Every 8 seconds they're coming in, going out, coming in, going out. I gotta do something. So I turn around, I take a step forward, I turn around, I look at Secret Service, and they didn't do anything. So I walked up to the president, about 6 steps out from here to where you are in the first row, and I said, Mr. President, we have to fix your tie. It's moving to the right. Oh, okay. And so he adjusts, and he does. And I turn around, and Secret Service is stepping forward, and he has his hand in his pocket. I says, oh God, here come the handcuffs. He pulls out a Thai class and hands it to the president, who puts it on and takes care of the issue. I was a happy camper. I didn't have to be concerned anymore. It's just those first 10 or 15 that was bugging me. I don't know if any other photographers would have done that, but I did. And I do it again. Every year there's social political event to raise money for the Ford's Theater Society. And the presidential gala brings everybody in who's anybody in political circles. And they enjoy an evening of entertainment with top-notch entertainers. And the presidents come in through the front foyer of the theater. Now, if you see in the background, there's a tent. So what they do is the Secret Service creates a tent on the street right next to the door, and then they drive the car into the tent. And then when the car is there, the president can get out and walk up the steps and go into the theater, and he's greeted by the director of the theater. So this happened. I photographed the presidential gala for probably 20 years or so. And each time it was fun, and each time there were issues and challenges, like this one. Now, these are different images that I've taken of presidents. They weren't all there at the same time. These are 4 different events. They come down and they sit in the very front row, and then they watch the stage. Up on the upper corner of the middle picture is the Lincoln box. This is where President Lincoln was shot, where John Wilkes Booth jumped down onto the stage, broke his leg, and ran out the back door, dragging his leg. The area in the red is where I got into trouble. And what happens is during the intermission, there are, can't get this little thing to work. During the intermission, this tiny area is open to people to come down and greet the president, greet the first lady, get their picture taken, da-da-da-da-da, that sort of thing. And so one of the patrons down here at this end was asking me to get his picture with his friends, and I said, sure, no problem. And then he adds more people to the group, and so I'm backing up, and I'm backing up, and I'm backing up, and I keep backing up, and I stepped on somebody's toes, and I turn around, and I say, I'm so very sorry, it's the President of the United States. Secret Service glared at me. The president said, oh, that's okay. Secret Service glared at me. The photographer that was working with me disowned me. I don't know that woman. And I was thoroughly embarrassed. That I haven't let happen again, ever. George Bush's Papa Bush. George Bush 41. Yeah. So former presidents, they become private citizens, but most of them do not shun from the spotlight after office. They give speeches, they give lots of them, they adopt a cause. We still hear from them and about them. Mr. Ford retired to the desert in California. One fact we tend to forget about Gerald Ford is that he was never elected to the office of vice president or president. He was appointed. He never went through a political campaign. He took the place of Spiro Agnew when that vice president went out under the Nixon administration, and then he took the place of Nixon when he ascended to the presidency, when President Nixon went out under the Watergate scandal. So he never was elected. He had a campaign with Jimmy Carter, and he lost to Jimmy Carter. One of the things Mr. Ford did that was very strong was to issue the pardon to Richard Nixon. That was a very, very controversial action. but it settled the country down and it put the issue behind us. Mr. Carter, he went on to found the Carter Institute. It's in Atlanta, Georgia. I've actually photographed him there, and where his international human rights works continues to this day. Mr. Reagan settled back in California with presidential offices in Los Angeles, in the heart of Century City. Oh, my favorite. There are times when a photo opportunity just kind of speaks to me, and this was one. Jacques Cousteau is a famed deep-sea explorer, and Carl Sagan, the world-renowned astronomer. They were at an event in the same room, and kind of in opposite sides of the room, and nobody really thought about bringing them together. But I looked at them and I said, this photo is iconic. It absolutely is. That one is too, but we'll get to that. This photo is iconic. And so I asked them if they would come together and pose, take a picture with me, for me, and they did. And so we've used that many times in work, and it remains one of my favorites. Yes, it was a dark and stormy night. The weather delayed the First Lady's plane. She was flying in from somewhere in Maine, I believe. And we were waiting backstage because she and the president were about to go on, and they were guests and they had to give speeches and da-da-da, and they didn't want to go on without her. But she came in that green room, as we call it, and she rushed right up to her husband, and this look of connection, I saw it, and I said, that is just unbelievable. And to me, regardless of politics, regardless of whether you agree or disagree with whatever, that is a look of deep, deep connection. The most amazing part of that is this picture was taken during the height of the Lewinsky scandal. So you can see how it turned out. Tip O'Neill. Two Republicans and a Democrat here working together. They get things done. It wasn't always fun and games, but they got things done. Tip O'Neill stood for liberal values and those of his constituents in Massachusetts, but he, like other politicians, knew how to compromise. Papa Bush, the same. And Alan Simpson, an irascible former senator from Wyoming, who recently recorded a fun video encouraging young people to use the power of the internet to help solve the issues of Washington. It's called The Can Kicks Back. It's a spoof on how Congress keeps kicking a can down the road by avoiding the decisions of important issues. The importance of making a difference, and making that difference, is really based on the dedication of the individuals who work together. Here we have Bob and Elizabeth Dole and a young Tom Hanks in 2000. This was during the groundbreaking ceremonies of the World War II Memorial. This particular event was the culmination of many, many, many hours and years of Bob Dole's fundraising, working with Congress, with the communities, with the country, to honor the sacrifices of those who served in World War II. There's a monument there where each week busloads of World War II veterans arrive at the memorial as part of honor flights, originally created by Bob Dole, Fred Smith of Federal Express, and many others who helped make it possible. It's another example of working together for the larger good. I photographed those honor flights, and they're absolutely amazing. They bring them into the airport, and there's balloons, and there's bands, and there's everything going on, and they bus them to the memorial, and it's just an amazing experience. John Hume He's on the left, on the right. Is a former member of the Northern Ireland Labour Party. He's regarded as one of the most important political figures in Northern Ireland's recent history. He's one of the architects of the Northern Ireland peace process. He and former British politician David Trimble, who's on this side, who led the Ulster Unionist Party, were awarded the Nobel Peace Prize in 1998 for their work to bring peace to Northern Ireland. A Protestant conservative, a Catholic Labour Party member, worked together to diffuse the issues that tore Northern Ireland apart. It took the conviction of both sides with a common goal for bloodshed to end and a peace accord to take its place. Senator Ted Kennedy, in the middle of the photo, whose roots go generations deep, was also an important catalyst, along with the immense work of Senator George Mitchell, who was appointed by President Clinton to help make this happen. Now, this photo represents an iconic event. The Pittston coal mine strike of 1989 was long and it was difficult. In the simplest of terms, the issue was the decline in coal prices and the decision of the coal company to break their long-established agreement and eliminate the health care benefits of retired mine workers, many with black lung disease and other complications from working in the mines. The United Mine Workers Union worked with the coal mine executives for several months prior to a strike, trying to hammer out a solution. Nothing would work. The strike was called and it spread throughout the coal mines in Virginia. It was great in Kentucky too. It was great economic damage on both sides. After 10 long and very, very tough months, this photo represents the settlement that was reached and signed in the Department of Labor offices in Washington, D.C. The miners had the benefits reinstated. Congress passed the Coal Act, ensuring that this issue never happened again. The coal mine executives, Secretary of Labor Elizabeth Dole, Richard Trumka, and the United Mine Workers president, and now the president of the AFL-CIO, and the mediator throughout the entire process, the former Secretary of Labor, William Ussery, are seen in this picture. The woman in these photos started out as a determined one-woman band. She is my advocate hero client. Joan Samuelson was a 40-something lawyer from the Bay Area when she was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease in the early 90s. She researched the disease and found nothing was being done to find a cure for this silent killer. This was her call to action. Being a good lawyer, she built a case for funding and began investigating options. She came to Washington. One meeting took her to the NIH, National Institute of Health. Here, she spread out all her research and information and was politely told by the head researchers at NIH that there was not a big enough return to invest money into this disease and to take her cause elsewhere. Thank you for coming. So she did, right up to Congress's door. I was initially asked by a friend of hers to follow this woman around the halls of Congress and photograph her meetings and her encounters. As I did this, I saw this strong, determined, polite individual, someone I had never really seen before. Joan continued her meetings with members of Congress. She raised funds through dinners and whatever else she could raise money from. She testified before committees over and over and over again, and I continued to document it all. She founded the Parkinson's Action Network, the first nationwide grassroots organization to educate the people who have this silent disease and encourage them to educate their congresspersons. They came to Washington in droves to participate in the annual Parkinson's forums. Together, they pushed Congress for funding for NIH. Enter Michael J. Fox, diagnosed with the same disease and nowhere to turn. Joan mentored him for several months about the ropes of Washington. He eventually went on to establish the Michael J. Fox Foundation for Parkinson's Research. Enter Muhammad Ali, our American boxer icon, who has fallen to the same disease, and the thousands and thousands across the country whose disease was silent no more. Congress did fund NIH after a long, protracted campaign. Michael Fox has raised millions and millions of dollars for cutting-edge research. Muhammad Ali's wife continues to speak out on behalf of her husband as his voice has been silenced by the disease. Parkinson's Action Network and Michael J. Fox Foundation have recently merged into one research and advocacy organization to continue to move this issue forward and find a cure. We have a one-woman band, Joan Samuelson, to thank for putting the name of Parkinson's in the nation's vernacular as it is silent no more. I'm honored to have Joan with us today. She came from Santa Rosa, and I just thank you so much for what you've done to support all who did not know where to turn. Never, ever underestimate the power of a woman determined. This is a little snapshot that was kind of easy to put together, huh? They're so relaxed, they're so comfortable, they're so judicial. These are the Chief Justices of the Supreme Courts of the states, and they were in Washington for their meetings. And I was asked to create this portrait for them. They are standing in front of the door that goes into the Supreme Court chambers. I had 5 minutes to approximately line them up and seat the justices, ask them to place their hands in their lap, please, in a certain way, straighten their feet, allow them room for the Supreme Court Justice John Roberts to sit in the center. No, please don't sit there. That's for the Chief Justice. Remember, though, that when I talk about people in power, they're human beings first. They all want to look great, and I want them to look great. So a little cajoling with them to get the image to all of our satisfactions had to be done quickly, and it was. They came, they sat straight, they smiled, they departed. Another successful 5 minutes. Of course, it took an hour and a half to get it all set up and the chairs in place and calm the client's nerves.
Looks like not all of them next.
No, not all of them. There's about, I think it's about 38 or 39, something like that. This is what I call my wall. It's my only little legacy in Washington, D.C. I am the official photographer for the D.C. Court of Appeals, which if the D.C. were a state, this would be their Supreme Court. And I've photographed them since, I think, about 1988, every time they have a new judge that comes in to replace one who has retired. So last week I was in D.C. and I really wanted a picture of this wall because I like it. I think I'm proud of it. And I wanted to get the photo, and so I called my guy in the administration office and I said, hey, can I come over and take a picture of the wall? He said, sure, no problem. Just check with security, let you know. And so I went to security and they remember me, they know me. And he said, well, where's this wall? I said, well, I think it's on the 3rd floor. Oh, I don't think so. I think you want to go see the paintings downstairs. I said, no. Want to see the pictures, the photos. Oh, we better call the clerk of the court to make sure. Okay. Clerk of the court comes. Pictures. You want to take a picture of the judges? Well, I want to take a picture of the wall. Oh, we better call the marshal's office. I'm sure it's okay, but we better call the marshal's office. Okay, anyway. Marshal's office said, sure, no problem. So I go upstairs, I've got my camera, my big camera. I put it up there, I put the wide-angle lens on it, I click it. I don't have any film. I don't have a card in the camera. I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing? So all that trouble, because all that time took about a half an hour to just go through that rigmarole of getting me to the 3rd floor. But I had my iPhone. The picture on the right is an iPhone picture. So if I could use that all the time and they came out looking like that all the time, wow, it'd sure take a weight off my shoulders. Celebrities come to Washington and they have important issues. These ones that I've chosen are the ones that I feel are important. Oh, Bono. Isn't he cute? He is so cool. Okay, so Bono is at this event, and there's 1,000 people there, and he is being introduced by one of the other honorees, who is the spokeswoman for the International Special Olympics. Okay, she's pretty nervous about introducing Bono. So she does a great job, and then the thing that he did raised the bar so very high. He asked for and received her autograph. There was a standing ovation. Her nerves were diffused, and everybody was happy, and I got the shot. Dolly Parton. She came to receive an award from the American Association of American Publishers in Washington. She has an organization, a nonprofit organization called Imagination Library. She gives away a book a month from the time a child is born until the time a child is 5 years old to everybody in her county. She started out that way years and years ago. Now it is all through the United States, it's in Canada, it's in the United Kingdom, and it's now in Australia. These children get a bookcase, they get 60 books every month until they are 5 years old. She does this in honor of her father, who did not know how to read. And she wanted to have children have that opportunity to learn to read. I think that's pretty cool. I lost a page. Mr. H is the stuffed monkey that's in the front of the picture. And apparently Mr. H has traveled all over the world with Dr. Goodall. She was here in Washington to support an organization who was a client of mine. And I had photographed her a couple of times before when she was in, but I took this picture of Dr. H and another one of him, and then I sent them to her, and I got, by great surprise, this wonderful note from her saying, "Your splendid images of Mr. H have just arrived, or rather they have just gotten to see them. They were in a big bundle of mail that got misplaced. Thank you so much." He's been to his 34th country, Russia. Now we're gearing up for the fall festival tour. He's had a much more restful summer than I have. We get into an area where I'm going to get a little bit political, but more human rightsy than political. In keeping, we live in a world here in the United States, we live in our cities, we live in the United States, and we live in a huge world. And we are all connected. And we all need to take care of each other. So, with keeping with my theme of working together for the good of the world, I just want to mention a very important part of my volunteer work. It includes documenting work that occurs by enormously brave men and women in the world on behalf of those who cannot speak for themselves on issues of human rights and women's rights. I do this in Washington, D.C., the United Nations, and in France. One of the groups that I work with is called the National Council of Resistance of Iran. It's an internationally supported, and I mean internationally, this is some of the UN work, internationally supported by members of parliaments and congresses from over 66 countries. It's proudly stand by this resistance side. It works tirelessly and non-violently within the systems to bring awareness and move change and to expose and to change the oppressive tactics of state sponsorship of terrorism that comes out of this country. It's not your neighborhood block party resistance movement, believe me. It's strong, it's international, it's democratic. It stands for a secular government without any religious interference. It stands for equal rights for women and support of children's rights, and a full spectrum of a 10-point plan that carries the same values that we hold dear in our country. I photographed their activities in Congress and the State Department and the UN and in Brussels and in France. And every year, I'm going to go back to this one, every year in Paris, there's 100,000 people who come from all walks of life to hear these international leaders speak and to hear philharmonic orchestras play and to hear children's choirs sing. It makes our political conventions look like child's play. They're just amazing. So the message, these are some of the international leaders from different countries, from India, from Morocco, from France, Iran via France, from Budapest, from Canada, from Sweden, and from United Kingdom. Together we can. Again, worldwide supporters. This is one of the events in Paris, and we have everyone from Howard Dean to, on the other side, on the totally other political side, John Bolton. So if you know the extent of the political beliefs of those two, they both support this particular issue of democracy for the people who want it. My message, again, is just a connection for the better good. There's so much divisiveness in the country right now. This political season is just bringing out the worst of it. So I want each of us to keep an open mind and just reject the hate that is spewing off the airways. We so take our freedoms for granted. Listen to those who abhor what is going on in the countries from which they had to escape to save their lives and to save the lives of their family members, and to listen to the positive steps that men and women are taking to help bring peace to the world. I'm very proud to have several of my Iranian American friends here today, and I honor them for the sacrifices they have made and continue to make to bring peace to all of us. So this next image is next to the last, and it's really fun. I was walking back to my hotel room after a meeting at the UN and my camera around my neck in New York City. So alongside of me was a 13-year-old girl and her mother, and we struck up a conversation. Kasia was her name, was enthralled by my camera, telling me she was going to be a photographer, and could she hold my camera, and what lens was on it, and how did it work. And so I showed her some of these things, and I gave it to her so she could check it out. And I was teaching her how to do certain things on it. She was a natural. She really was a natural. The way she held it, she got so enthusiastic. So I didn't know her mom was taking photos of us, but flash forward a couple of years and I see that she has a project called the Global Sunset Project. She and her mom raised funds and got Canon to sponsor her with a camera just like mine, and they took it off around the world to document what it means to be a global citizen. This kid's 17 years old. She's been in National Geographic Kids magazine. She's won awards. She just completed a show at the United Nations. She's on a roll. And the thrilling part for me is that those photographs that her mom took of that New York sidewalk encounter with my camera grace her posters and her books. So the message here is, don't be afraid to share your gifts through teaching. You help others do this. It's a global circle we live in. Help each other. We all get along so much better. So I leave you with the immortal words of Charlie Bear, America's official adventure bear, who travels the U.S. and discovers what's great about America's people and places and shares it with the world. Remember, always take time to sniff the flowers wherever you are. Thank you very, very much.